It's week 3, day 19 of my full-time spinal rehabilitation. Quick status update. I am feeling much more energetic today than I did yesterday. I was depleted. And now I have energy. I don't know where it came from, but apparently I slept all right and I'm back. So good news on that front. For the tip today, I talked yesterday about getting some more protein into my diet. I've done some research and realized that protein bars are basically garbage. Um, they have tons of saturated fat in them, even though they tend to be low carb. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to eat a bunch of fat with my protein, I might as well just eat nuts because nuts are protein and fat, and they're much less processed than a protein bar. So I'm not going to bother buying protein bars. Plus, they're less expensive, right? Nuts are less expensive than protein bars are. So from a health perspective and an economics perspective, I'm just going to make a quick little nut concoction, kind of like an impromptu trail mix with a little bit of dried fruit and some nuts. Some of the best nuts you can use for protein are, well, actually seeds, hemp seeds, and then almonds and walnuts. So I just make a little trail mix, take it to the gym for my after workout snack, and that seems to help. Also, before I go to the gym now, I always eat a piece of fruit. There have been a couple of occasions where I felt depleted during my workouts and not feeling very well, and I think that had to do with a little bit of low blood sugar. So I always eat a piece of fruit before I go to the gym, and then after I work out, within the first 20 or 30 minutes, I'll eat a little nut mix to get some protein and a little bit of sugar into my diet. So that's it for the tip. For the topic today, I want to talk a little bit about psychedelics. So I've talked about fighting for your mind and gone into some detail about meditation and how that works and how that can help. But there's another pharmacological aspect of this, which is sometimes you need some medicine to help you get better. And there's an entire class of drugs that most people are completely unfamiliar with, and they're called psychedelics. And when most people think or hear of psychedelics, they're thinking of hallucinating, right? Just hallucinating and seeing strange colors and shapes and people that aren't there. Crazy stuff, right? Why would you possibly take psychedelics to heal your mind? And the answer is because in the right quantities, they are great for curing a whole host of disorders, including anxiety and depression. This was known in the 50s, as far back as the 1950s. This was well known. And then the 1960s come around and everybody starts using these things recreationally, and they take a lot, they don't know where they are, they fall off balconies, walk into traffic, and everybody says, stop, stop. And including all research just ground to a halt pretty much overnight. All of psychedelics were designated as a class 1 drug, like heroin or cocaine, and that means they have no medicinal value in the eyes of the federal government. However, we know they have medicinal value. We knew it at the time that they declared them to be class 1 drugs. So basically, it was all a lie. They have medicinal value. We're just so scared and had such a cultural backlash against them, such a stigma, that we just stopped everything. For literally about 50 years, research ground to a halt. There was no research going on in the area of psychedelics. And then it picked back up again in the 2000s, 2005 to 2010 timeframe. And now there are just all of these studies going on across major universities, including Johns Hopkins, for various psychedelics. That includes psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine's already been approved for use, and it has psychedelic properties as well. Anyway, there's just a whole host of these drugs that are finally being recognized for what they really are, which is their medicine. They're not really recreational drugs. They can be turned into recreational drugs, but they have immense therapeutic value. And it's really a crying shame, actually it's a crime, that these drugs were not treated as medicinal for the last 50 years and fully researched and made available to the public, because people suffer and have had to use antidepressants that really don't work. And psychedelics have, I mean, the results are pretty shocking. Let me give you the most extreme example I've heard of. So MDMA can be used to help PTSD patients. For example, soldiers that come back from war and have PTSD symptoms. After 3 sessions with a counselor on MDMA, they're able to open up and share all the scary things that torment them that they normally just can't bring themselves to talk about. And the cure rate is 60%. I don't know what the cure rate was for therapies before that, but we were talking on a scale of years, not number of visits. So 3 visits, 60% cure rate, whereas before that, you had to go to therapy for years, and the cure rate was less than that. So this is the kind of leap forward I'm talking about. These substances are amazing. I am an evangelist. I do not sell them. I have no financial interest, but I've also experienced personally how effective they can be. And so I'm like, it really woke me up. And the whole reason I'm even doing this rehab is because I wanted something more from life. And the reason I wanted something more from life is I realized I was asleep. And psychedelics woke me up. And instead of sitting around in a state of subsistence, which is what I was doing, I didn't think I could have anything better. I just had to toe the line, go to work, feel exhausted, come home, provide for the family. That was my life. That was it. I didn't have energy for anything else. I didn't aspire to anything else. I just tried to toe a line. And it sucked. It just sucked. And psychedelics woke me up to the fact that my life was crap at that point. I was not living. I was subsisting. And it was almost like God hurled a lightning bolt down in my direction and just shook the hell out of me and woke me up. I literally was shaking during my psychedelic experience. I had too much of the psychedelic the first time I tried it. Again, it wasn't in a clinical environment, it was in a religious environment. And they didn't necessarily meter it out with the discretion you might get from a physician. So I had too much, and it literally shook the hell out of me. But the effect was to wake me out of a deep slumber, and I realized I wasn't living, and I wanted more. And so I can't say enough positive things about psychedelics. There are a couple of psychedelics that are currently available to you right now if you go out and look for them. There might be clinical trials, for example, with psilocybin or MDMA or something like that in your area, but it's localized around hospitals that are actually doing the clinical trials. So if you live next to one, great. If you don't, there are a couple of things you can probably get that are legal right now. One is called Ayahuasca. It's a plant from South America. You can get it typically in a religious context. You'd have to participate in a religious ceremony. Most of these organizations are not seeking converts necessarily. They're just providing an experience. So you can go do it that way. That's what I did. You can also take ketamine in a clinical setting, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm going through the insurance approval process right now for ketamine. So I hope to start that as soon as possible. There have been some delays. I'd expected to already have started by now. So once I have that experience, I'm going to share it with you. It's just going to be, the timetable is defined by the insurance company at this point, not me. But I'm excited. I want to do it. But all these other drugs are coming through the FDA fast-tracked and should be available for clinical use in a pretty short amount of time. The FDA timetables are kind of elongated, but for fast-tracking, I think it's like within a year or so. Some of these things are supposed to become available to you generally. So I'm excited about psychedelics. I realize there's a stigma around them. I understand why the stigma's there. But if you see the value, the medicinal value, and the way that it can change a life, my life's an example of that. I am alive again. I was dead. I was a walking dead person, like a zombie. I was walking through life, subsisting, and now I'm alive and I'm striving for something. And I owe that to a plant called ayahuasca. And again, do not take it lightly. It's not fun. Psychedelics taken at therapeutic doses typically are not fun because there's a lot of work that goes with it, a lot of emotional work. It's kind of traumatic sometimes to take them depending on the dose. So it can be brutal, just frankly brutal. And my experience with ayahuasca was pretty brutal. But again, I'm grateful for it because I'm awake and I'm alive. So going back to my slogan about fighting for your life, you need to fight for your life in any way you can. And that means sometimes going into unconventional realms like psychedelics and exploring them. Don't, just blacklist any area or realm just because it has a stigma associated with it. Do the research, find out what's available, and go for it. Try everything. And if it works, run with it. And if it doesn't, drop it. But as far as I'm concerned, psychedelics are a win for most people. Even people that are probably healthy could benefit from them, in my opinion, mentally healthy. because I think you probably have some things that they're hanging around in the recesses of your mind that will come up under psychedelics that you can deal with. And the work that you do when that comes up is called integration work. You actually come back into your real life and you do something with the knowledge that you gain under psychedelics. I was actually planning on wrapping the video up, but I'm going to go on a little side trip here real quick. Here's an example of some integration work I did. I had an unresolved issue with a childhood friend. We'd had a falling out several years ago. And I decided, because of when I was on psychedelics, this came up for me as something that was unresolved and that I wanted to deal with. And so I actually acted on it. I came back. When I came down, I called him up and apologized for my part in our falling out, and realized, that he really didn't hold a grudge against me like I thought he did. And your experience may vary in trying to mend relationships, right? But this was a huge load lifted off my mind, and it really helped me to feel connected to him again and to who I was in the past. And so I did that integration work. And so again, it's not just a good time taking psychedelics. In most cases, it's not a good time because you're dealing with really difficult emotional issues. But anyway, in fighting for your mind, don't cordon off areas that you think might be a little fringe, because if they work, they work. And if they work for you, you run with it. You do whatever it takes to get your life back, which is what I'm doing. If you have any questions or comments about psychedelics or any experiences you'd like to share, please do so in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe.